Hello, and welcome to the Wellbeing at MSU Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Alexis Travis, Assistant Vice President and Assistant Provost for University Health and Wellbeing. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that sits at the heart of every healthy organization, and that's trust. Our guest today is Minda, Harts, best-selling author of Talk to Me Nice, and the creator of the 7 Trust Languages. And so today we're going to be talking about how Minda helps organizations and leaders navigate communication, equity, and trust directly, and how they shape well-being at work. Today we'll explore trust-centered leadership and how it creates healthier, more supportive workplaces where people can truly thrive. So Minda, good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Travis.
As you shared yesterday, this is your first time on the MSU campus.
Yes.
And so how are you enjoying our campus and how are you doing today?
Well, I'm grateful to be invited, and I understand why people are so go green and white. So I'm feeling good about being here. Thank you.
Good. You're here at a great time. The weather is finally starting to get warmer, and it's wonderful to have you here. And we had you with a group from University Health and Wellbeing yesterday, and that was really an enriching time. But I wanted to start by just sharing a little bit more about kind of the connection to your work. And so last summer, I was on vacation, and I took with me one of your earlier books, which was The Memo, and really enjoyed reading that. And then I found out you had another book coming out later in the fall, and so I kind of got on the pre-order list.
Thank you.
For Talk to Me Nice, and I read it over the winter break. And then I enjoyed it so much, I said to my executive leadership team, we should read this as a team and really get into these 7 trust languages. And so that's what we did. And then we enjoyed it so much together, we were like, we need to bring this to the whole team. And so that's where the invitation came up. And so thank you for accepting that invitation and joining us here. So you've mapped out these 7 trust languages for how people can support healthy workplace and healthy workplace interactions. Can you tell us a little bit more about these 7 trust languages for someone who might not be familiar?
Yes. So again, thank you. So what I realized was we have languages for love, right? A lot of people have heard of Gary Chapman's The 5 Love Languages, wildly successful. And I thought, well, if we have love languages, what about at work, right? What languages can we all speak together that builds trust and better communication? And so I thought about, what would a trust language be? Because trust looks different for you and it looks different for me. And I find that sometimes we have expectations of each other in the workplace that we may or may not be aware of, and therefore it is no longer really a trust issue, but a communication crisis and an expectation gap. And so I thought, well, when people say they don't trust something, what they're really saying is, I have an expectation that you're not meeting. So if you knew what I needed, right, then we can speak a language that we get to a more harmonious place, right, in our communication, less conflict. But even when we do disagree with each other, we can still keep humanity and respect at the center. And so that's what led to creating these trust languages. When people said they didn't trust something about someone they worked with or reported to, etc., it fell into one of these 7 buckets. So do we want to get into those?
Yeah, we can.
I'll really quickly. So I brought my cards. I have my trust cards.
I love that. Yeah.
But
can folks order these too?
You know what? Go to my website. You can. But so sometimes when I'm at organizations, we play with cards in smaller groups. So one of them is demonstration, and that's pretty much essentially it's the show and the tell. So when trust breaks, we can't just say, oh, I'm sorry, and do it again, right? We have to demonstrate that our actions align with our values. Right. Another one is feedback, and that's meaningful and consistent insight. And I think sometimes we love to give feedback as a gift, but not everybody receives it.
It's not always a gift.
It's not always a gift. So is this an opportunity for growth, and are we allowing people to have a interaction with us so it becomes a loop? And I find that breakdown happens sometimes with feedback, right? Transparency, it's that clarity and honesty. I think some people say they don't trust someone, not because they're a bad person, but because they just have a lot of ambiguity in what's going on, right? And they just need more clarity. Sensitivity is that, have I earned the right to talk to you this way, say this thing, write this thing. So tone, actions, behavior, being more empathetic, right? It may not bother me, so I'm not going to so I dismiss you. But knowing that it bothers you, I'm going to handle it with a little more care, right? I'm going to, what is on the boxes? Fragile, right? In a sense, right? So I'm gonna approach it differently. The next one, follow through. A lot of people, especially in the workplace, we don't trust that something's going to get done because people no longer keep their word. They're not true to their commitments, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like doing what you say you will.
Yes,
do, right?
absolutely. And two more, acknowledgement, that's being seen and valued and recognized. And sometimes people just need to know that you see, hey, thanks for the report that you did in Q4. If it wasn't for that, I don't know what we do. And lastly, security. It's that psychological, intellectual, and emotional safety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that last one is huge as well in terms of kind of what people need to feel safe and then to be able to, in turn, trust after that. So in Chapter 1, you draw a powerful connection between trust and stress, sharing that employees in high-trust organizations report 74% less stress and 40% less burnout. At MSU, about half of our employees say they're concerned about how their stress impacts their work. Can you talk about how trust gets built or broken in ways that directly affect stress, and how do leaders and employees play a role in that dynamic?
Yeah, absolutely. I think right now, sometimes we don't realize that we have two choices in the workplace. We can either enhance the relationship with someone or erode the relationship, right? And I think we're all moving at 90,000 miles per hour. So if I shoot you that email and I need something right now, I'm not really thinking about how that tone might land on you, right? Or who I CC'd on the email and might take you by surprise. All of that increases our cortisone levels, right? Where we're like, oh, what was the intention here, right? And so we start creating this narrative of why you might have CC'd that person, why you said I can't take paid time off, all of these different things, because we're talking around each other and not with each other. And so to your point, when stress is present, we are not as productive. You can't focus. I know when my stress is high, I get my work done, but I'm not my best self, right? So I think it's important for us to recognize that. Again, how quickly we can have trust at 9 a.m. and then you get that email or you get that call or that impromptu meeting where you never have those and you don't preface or give a disclaimer like, hey, everything is cool, let's just all meet and regroup. It just creates a lot of stress. And I think the workplace could function a lot better when we have more trusted outcomes. And I just think we move so fast that we forget about the impact.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting because it's almost like the trust level impacts even the stories that we tell ourselves in the first place that could further undermine the trust, right? So that's kind of a loop and a cycle inside of itself. Do you see variations between the generations in the workplaces and then which trust languages that they're most aligned with?
Absolutely. So as you know, and all of us know, we worked in a lot of different spaces with various generations, from boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, and eventually, what is it, Alpha?
Alpha, yeah, Gen Alpha, which is the next generation.
Yeah. So, when you think about baby boomers, for example, they entered into the workplace where it was a little more stable, right? You had maybe a pension waiting for you. You bought into your Social Security. You were like
nice things.
all the bells and whistles. You get all of them, and then you think about someone like Gen Z, where the job market isn't as stable. There's a lot of confusion. One day we're doing it this way, one day we're working from home, one day we're not. There's a lot, and then people kind of look at them like, why are you asking these questions? And it's like, well, my mom and dad or my guardians trained me to, or socialized me to ask questions, right? To advocate for myself. And I think sometimes that rubs other generations the wrong way, or it's seen as a sense of entitlement or things of that sort. And I think it's, we all can need respect when we're communicating with each other. Dr. Travis, I speak at a lot of places, and all the time I hear Gen X and baby boomers saying, those millennials, those Gen Z, and I tell them, if you were in that group, would you want someone to keep always referring to you in that way? That's not enhancing the relationship. That's eroding it. And they're like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. And I think, again, it's not what you say, but how you say it.
Yeah. I really love that because it's a simple thing you can ask yourself, like a self-check.
Yes.
Like, am I building or eroding
Yeah.
the trust in this action or this statement? So MSU is a health promoting campus, something that we're very proud of. And being a health promoting campus is really embedding health and well-being in all aspects of campus life. So how does trust play a role in creating health promoting workplaces?
Well, first, I just want to commend you for your leadership, because even having this conversation, many people are not comfortable even saying, could we have better trust, right? Could we have better and effective communication? Sometimes it's easier just to say, everything's fine here, nothing to see here, right? And there lies where the maybe one's mental health may hang in the balance because there isn't that security. So the trust language of security is really important because people need psychological safety. If I do have a concern, do I feel safe enough to tell you within the next 2 weeks, as opposed to, oh, I better wait till the end of the year because I just seen what happened to my colleague and now I'm nervous, right, to talk, or they're always busy and I just don't want to bother them. So I think those things, that's not necessarily a leader's fault, but I think creating that container in which people feel safe, right? Doesn't mean we're not going to have reorganizations, doesn't mean layoffs or, big things are going to happen, but sometimes trust is lost in the quiet moments, right? And I think as long as people feel like they can ask a question, like they can make a mistake, and there's not that fear of retribution. So I think that psychological safety really does help with overall mental health. And I always tell people part of your self-care is self-advocacy. So if you don't speak up for yourself or ask for what you need, then people can't help you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge one. And I often talk about the data that we use and the different aspects of feedback that we receive, and then holding a mirror up to ourselves and not being afraid to actually confront what the reality of the situation is, because that's the first step in kind of addressing challenges. So how can organizations like MSU sustain trust building efforts over time, as opposed to kind of a one-time initiative? Because I know I hear, people saying, it can't be a one and done. It has to be sustained.
Yeah, I think it goes back to 2 trust languages that I mentioned earlier, and that's transparency in a way that's providing clarity, right? If we made this decision, it's not just we made it and don't ask any questions, but let me give you the information that's helpful for your role, right? Here's maybe the reasons why it's impacting you, and I'm another trust language, acknowledging the impact, right? And I think part of that is people just want to feel like their work still matters, right? And I think when we leave it for us to fill in the gaps, we're going to think, oh, I'm going to be fired tonight, or nobody likes me, or, all of these different things. And those things may or may not be true, but if we don't even have a sense of transparency and honesty, I think that is something that, depending on what generation you're in too, we don't talk about those sorts of things, right? Things are a need to know basis. And I think that there's some yes and that we can take into consideration in these moments. But I think also acknowledging where people are and what they feel, I think that's a demonstration of trust, and then following through on those actions to demonstrate that it's not a one and done, but we're not going to click our heels and everything's solved tonight, but they can see the track record. And I think that's key.
Yeah. Demonstration over time.
Yes.
Kind of like repeated exposures to those behaviors. Yeah. So you've talked about restoring trust during difficult times. How can leaders and employees build and sustain trust together? And what communication behaviors truly make a difference in supporting employee health and well-being?
Yeah, I love this question so much. I think part of it too is understanding that we're all human first and colleague and employee second, right? So we are going to make mistakes. We are going to drop the ball at times, and it's not because I intentionally want to ruin our relationship and just blow it up, right? So I think we also have to give grace to people, and also think about the trust bank account. If I'm engaging with you, Dr. Travis, you've been depositing trust coins inside my bank. And so if you do something that I, question or whatever the case may be, I'm not going to completely cancel you because of that one action. I'm going to look at the bank and say, you know what? Dr. Travis's track record is trustworthy. Let me ask questions. Let me find out a little bit more what's going on. Let me take things into consideration. And I think oftentimes in the workplace, we just oh, that's what you're doing. And then we move on to the next thing. And I think that's part of it. Like, look at the track record of people. Now, if you haven't been depositing those things and you say you're going to do things and you don't, and it's a competitive, or if you say those things and you don't follow through, and now I see that that's part of your behavior, then that's a different conversation. Maybe repair work can't take place in the ways that I had hoped. But I think people deserve a second chance to a degree in which they understand what you need, right? And I think, again, a lot of times it's easier for people to be conflict adverse instead of moving toward, what do I want to gain after we have this conversation? And I think you can still have a difference of opinion or a breakdown in trust and be willing to demonstrate again, time and time again, that this relationship is valuable to me and you're worth me showing up for again.
Right. So I'm hearing it takes time, and not all repair is equal.
It is not created equal, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's also understanding that too, that we hope that we can be friends with everyone and that these ruptures don't take place. But sometimes we also have to look at the context, right? Look where people were coming from. Did I inherit a team where there was a lot of dysfunction, or, there's been a high turnover? So we also have to assess things and say, okay, this is going to take a little time to repair, but I'm, in it for the long run.
Yeah. Thank you. That's helpful. So every day, and especially now with AI, we're using these digital tools to communicate. Sometimes it's to draft a message, edit a response, or simply to enhance and share feedback. So what was once a very human interaction has become what might feel a little bit more transactional. How do we strike a balance between this need for efficiency and then keeping our humanity and also trust?
Yes, this is, I think, where we all can do a little bit better. Like, this is trust building in action. Take, for example, I send you an email about what I want. Clearly, you know that I may have used an agent to help me draft that up. Fine. But then you read it and you just put it into the agent too and say, respond to her with being direct and concise. And the next thing you know, you and I are not even reading, really. Our agents are just negotiating.
Pinging back and forth.
And so we lose the nuance of it, right? We lose the humanity. And so I'm not saying we don't use these for efficiency, but also remember that that agent doesn't know your relationship with me, vice versa, right? There's nuance to that. And just because it's direct and my commas are in the right places and semicolons doesn't mean that that's enhancing the relationship. So I'm asking people to say yes to efficiency, but don't outsource your humanity.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah.
Yes to efficiency, but not outsourcing humanity. I think that's something we can all keep with us. So health-promoting workplaces emphasize belonging and connection as essential components of well-being. We are both women of color, something that we share in common, and understand that trust can look differently for minoritized communities. Like I heard you say about transparency, how that was difficult for you growing up, and I instantly could relate to that because we were an immigrant family and were taught to be very private, right? And so how can trust languages help leaders better support experiences of marginalized communities and how that might look different?
Part of it that I want people to understand is that we might work at the same place or in the same department, but we don't experience trust the same in every situation. And I think it's important for people to understand that culture matters, identity, age, how people were raised and socialized, those things all factor in how we communicate, right? So again, it's less about trust being the real issue, but how we communicate. So I think leaders, I would encourage people to ask everyone on their team, not just their go-to people who they know they have good relationships with, but everybody to say, I want to make sure that we have the best working relationship while you're on my team. What does trust look like to you? Because what it looks like for someone who is an immigrant or someone who is an only child or someone who recently experienced a loss, right? Or they had a newborn baby, right? All of those things look different in the conversation. And I think we can't assume what people want to do their best work. And so asking the question, right? How can I best support you? And they may not know what the 7 trust languages are, but I guarantee you, if you ask the question, what does trust look like to you? They're going to tell you maybe transparency, right? Maybe safety. And that may be different from someone else on your team, but now I know, oh, okay, this works best for Minda. That's how I'm going to get the best productivity out of her, knowing what trust looks like. I can't just flex my trust language on her and expect that's enough and I've done my job, right? Trust begets trust, and trust is a two-way street.
Yeah. Trust begets trust. But what you said earlier is you can't just go to the same person that you always go to. And that made me think, do people gravitate towards people with the same trust languages? Is that something in this dynamic?
Well, perhaps it could, but I also think a lot of it is we all should consider the trust language of security, right? Because there's somebody on your team that, because they have such a great working relationship with you, psych safety isn't an issue, right? They know that they can make the joke, or they know that they're going to have this or that met, but somebody who might be a little more introverted or is new on the team, right? They may not speak up in the same ways, or they may not have had the opportunity to build a relationship with you to know the inner workings. And I think these are things that, you know, just because I can joke with one of my colleagues doesn't mean that I've earned the right to do it with another.
Right. Yeah, that's helpful. So what's one small habit a leader could adapt today to immediately enhance trust?
Yes. Well, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Is this email, is this meeting, is this feedback, is it going to enhance this relationship or erode this relationship? Is my decision making without having a little transparency, is it going to enhance the relationship? Is it going to erode? We always have two choices. Trust is a choice, right? And I think, again, none of us show up to work and say, who can we erode trust with? But remembering how our actions have impact, right? And what that looks like. And then also realizing that one trust language doesn't fit all, right? And so I think if we all start with, whenever we're in need, acknowledge the situation, right? And I think if we all flex that acknowledgement muscle and that transparency, that's going to enhance relationships, even if you don't know what everybody's trust languages are.
Yeah, that's so good. And so for our audience, you can take with you the 2 E's. Is it enhancing or is it eroding trust in that relationship? That's so good. Where can people find more information about you and about the 7 trust languages?
Yes, well, definitely purchase Talk to Me Nice, the 7 trust languages for a better workplace. And you can also go to mindaharts.com, and I have some additional trust resources there.
Okay, great. Thank you. Minda, I have loved our time together, both yesterday and today. Thank you for being here on the podcast and for explaining that trust isn't just a leadership skill, it's actually a well-being practice.
Yes.
And so with that, until next time, I'm your host, Dr. Alexis Travis for University Health and Wellbeing. Thank you for joining us.